While sticking with this reading today, this book was written back in 1920. It was actually introduced by Dr. John Henry Clark. In fact, I didn't find out about this brother until I actually heard Dr. Clark spoke one day. Because, like I say, when I'm actually listening to those lectures from those guys back in the past, the elders, I actually physically take notes. So I wrote down his name, and I looked him up. So it comes to find out that the guy's from the West Indies also. He's from back then it was the Danish West Indies. He's from St. Croix. I'm from St. Thomas. But anyway, I would have never known about the man because he was born in 1883 and died in 1927. That's long before I was born. Actually, before my father was born. I think my grandfather was born, I think, in 1919. So yeah, that's how long ago this was. But nevertheless, I want to reiterate that this was back in the 1920s. And you know how this country treated African people back in that time. But listen to the courage. I'm going to read this little excerpt. How can America hold up its hand in hypocritical horror at the foreign barbarism while the red blood of the Negro is clinging to those hands? So long as the President and Congress of the United States remain dumb in the presence of the barbarities of their own land, which would tip their tongues with righteous indignation if they had been done in Belgium, Iceland, or Galicia. And what are the Negroes to do? Are they expected to re-echo with enthusiasm and patriotic protestation of the bootlicking leaders whose pockets and positions testify to the power of the white man's gold? Let there be no mistake. Whatever the Negroes may be compelled by law to do and say, the resentment in their hearts will not down. Unbeknownst to the white people of this land, a temper is being developed among Negroes, which the American people will have to reckon. Now, this man said this back in the 1920s. You know, just speaking like that alone, you might have been visited by the Klan. You might have come home one day and found a cross burned in your lawn. It's back in 1920. I want to say that again, 1920. 7 years later, he was dead. Think about that for a second. The guts, the courage it took. You see, some people just have it in their DNA not to just be a get along kind of, to go along kind of person. They have that warrior spirit in their DNA. And no matter how much they might try to fight it, they just can't go along with that type of treatment. You know the song, before I'll be a slave, I'll be merry in my grave. Some of us got that kind of spirit that said, the hell nah, I can't deal with that kind of treatment. Think. Now this passage right here is very powerful, and I'm going to ask a question at the end of it. This leads us to the front face consideration of the problem of lynching. Why do white men lynch black men in America? We are not dealing here with the original historical cause, nor even with its present social application. We are considering merely the efficient cause. White men lynch black men or any other men because those men's lives are unprotected, either by authorities or by the Commonwealth or by the victims themselves. So I got a question. I've heard some statements. I heard it when they had that little fiasco right here on YouTube where some of these African American females were targeting some of the African males' channel and saying that African female was a protected class. Well, I just read here from this book right here in the 1920s that the African male is unprotected, and he's still unprotected to this day. So the African female is protected. Who's protecting the African male? So we remain out here once again by ourselves. We don't have any support from our women in that particular field, nor do we have any support from the communities or society for that matter. So there's no wonder why a lot of us die prematurely in the first or second quarter of life. You know, life is divided into 4 quarters, really. 0 to 25 is 1, 25 to 50 is the second, 50 to 75 is the third, and if you're extremely lucky, you might get 75 to 100, and if you're really lucky, you might get 100 to 125. That's the 5th quarter. I mean, that's a rare case, and if you're extremely lucky, you get to see 6 quarters where it'd be 125 to 150, but that's a rarity. But once again, who is going to protect the black man? I mean, he's saying it right here. He said, because those men lives are unprotected either by the authorities of the Commonwealth or by the victims themselves. White men lynch Negroes in America because Negroes' lives are cheap. So long as they remain, so long will lynching and evil be talked about, written about, pensioned against, and sobered over. But not all of the sober and talk or the pensions are worth the time it takes to indulge them, so far as the saving of a single Negro life is concerned. What then is the cure? The cure follows from the nature of the cause. Let Negroes determine that their lives shall no longer be cheap, but that they will exact the same high price as any other element in the community under similar circumstances would exact. Let them see to it that their lives are protected and defended, if not by the state, certainly by themselves. Powerful words from a guy who was living during that time. Again, he was born in 1883, died in 1927. The man didn't mince his words at all. I'm going to tell you the name of the book in a second. And I just want to touch back on real quickly about who's going to protect the black man or the African male. What I'm referring to is, if he does what he's supposed to do naturally, protect, and he puts it all on the line, and he gets he gets sent away, put it that way. Or it comes to the point where, you know, when the hammer drops, either from the gun hammer or from the gavel, does he have the community support? What I mean by that is, if he is no longer on the earth, or he's no longer able to work to support his family, does the community have his back where they will support his family, no questions asked? Because the last thing he wants to hear is, oh God, oh Johnny, you hear what happened to Johnny? Yeah, they give him 40 years in prison. Oh God, what his family gonna do now? Or even worse, oh God, you hear what happened to old Johnny? They gonna execute him, you know. He stand up, but they gonna give him the death penalty, or even worse. Oh God, you know, old Johnny, they shot him dead, you know. Yeah, man, they kill him dead up there. Oh God, what his family gonna do now that he gonna get himself killed like that? You know, he doesn't want to hear that. He wants to know, you know what? If he does what he's supposed to do naturally, does the community has his back? He wants to know that the community is going to support him, which means he has good legal representation, not no court-appointed attorney. He wants to know, well, the community is going to pay for my my legal representation, and if need be, if I'm not able to get out of prison again, they're going to support my family. So at least he knows that his sacrifice was not in vain. Because the last thing any person wants to know is they go and put it all on the line, and it's just them alone. When the gavel drops, it's just them. That has to be a hell of a feeling, man. Because, I mean, think about some of the political prisoners still in jail right now. Think about them. They ain't never going to see the light of day. Some of them dying right now in prison. Think about it. So if you're not going to go the distance and support, because I keep reading a lot of these different comments, I'm waiting for black men to step up. This is, I guess it's black women in regards to black men. I'm waiting for black men to do this, and I'm waiting for black men to do that. Why? Why should we put it on the line when the community is not going to put anything on the line? All we're going to be is just nothing more than a news story or a YouTube video or something, and then your life will continue to go on while ours is frozen in time. Because when you're in prison, I assume that your time is frozen because the whole world is going on around you. And when you get out, you're like, oh man, a whole lot of change. If you ever get out, a whole lot has changed while you remain frozen static in time, fighting for your survival inside of a prison. Or if your life is extinguished, knowing how we are, we'll go right back, we'll go right on, business as usual, as if nothing never transpired. You just be another dead African American male, or another dead African male, just dead. And the community will forget all about you and keep going forward. So don't be so quick to tell black men you need to stand up, you need to stand up. What about you? Are you going to stand up and support? If the answer is no, then shoot, don't expect none of us to stand up just to be standing up for the sake of being on the being cannon fodder for anyone. Who the hell wants to throw their life away for some people who don't even give a damn about their own lives? So just remember that. If we're supposed to be putting it all on the table, what are you going to bring? It can't be just words. What are you willing to sacrifice? If it's just words, then you understand why we're still in the condition we're in to this day. You can't have it all. Just want to make that perfectly clear. Now going back to this book. Now I'm going to read this couple of pages here, and I'm going to bring this book here to a close. To the masses of our people, we say read. Get the reading habit. Spend your spare time not so much in training your feet to dance as in training your head to think. And at the very outset, draw the line between books of opinions and books of information. Saturate your minds with the latter, and you will be forming your own opinions, which will be worth 10 times more to you than the opinions of the greatest minds on earth. That's really, really powerful what he's saying. You know, a lot of time we take a lot of people's opinion, not so much today in books, because many of us don't really read books today, but more likely since the time has changed or changed a whole lot since then. Well, what we do is watch a lot of YouTube videos and different videos online, and we take these people's opinions for fact and not really realizing that they're just giving out opinions. And I keep saying it over and over and over and over. A lot of times these people are no smarter than you, but a lot of you put them up in pedestals as if they're just so godly and so smart. And to tell you the truth, a lot of us are just lazy when it comes to information. We're just lazy. We want somebody to read the book and tell us what the book is about. Literally, I've actually had people tell me, hey man, what's the book about? I say, well, why don't you read it, man? The book ain't out, it's not that big. Now, man, why don't you read it and you tell me what it's about? What? You want me to read the book and I must interpret the book for you? Something wrong with your brain? No. But see, when I start asking those kind of questions, people get offended. Now, this next part here is very, very, very important. We Negroes, in a world in which we are the underdog, must shape our youth for living in such a world. Shall we shape them mentally to accept the status of the underdog as their predestined lot? Or shall we shape them into men and women fit for a free world? To do the former needs nothing more than continuing as we are. To do the latter is to shape their souls for continued conflict with a theory and practice in which most of the white world that surrounds them are at one. Remember, read that last part real good because you might have got a little confused. It says, to do the latter is to shape their souls for continued conflict with a theory and practice in which most of the white world that surround them are at one, which means they all hold one collective head. While we want to be stratified and divided, most of them holding one collective head. Now this part is very, 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 well, very key. The educational system in the United States and the West Indies was shaped by white people for white youth, and from their point of view, it fits their purpose well. Into this system came the children of the Negro. Parents, when chattel slavery was ended, and their relation to the problem of life was obviously different, which is obvious. I mean, that's obvious right there. The white boy and white girl draw exclusively from stored-up knowledge and experience of past and present generations of white people to fit them for business of being dominant in a world of colored people. I'll read that part real quick. I'll read that part again real quick. The white boy and white girl draw exclusively from stored-up knowledge and experience of past and present generation of white people to fit them for business of being dominant whites in a world full of colored people. The examples of valor and virtue of which their minds are fed are exclusively white examples. What wonder, then, that each generation comes to maturity with the idea embedded in its minds that only white men are valorous and fit to rule, and only white women are virtuous and entitled to chivalry, respect, and protection. I'll read that last part again because that's really, really important. It said the examples of valor and virtue on which their minds are fed are exclusively white examples. What wonder, then, that each generation comes to maturity with the idea embedded in its mind that only white men are valorous and fit to rule, and only white women are virtuous and entitled to chivalry, respect, and protection. And some people wonder why. Well, first, when you're trying to tell, hey man, you studying all this stuff here, man, and even in the college books and everything else, and that having that Eurocentric education, it plays a toll. You think education is just education. No, that plays a toll. Every time you look at somebody who's the smartest person, I mean, you can watch it on TV. You could be watching something on, let's say, Egypt. You're going to see, first you're going to see probably more like you're going to have an Arab talking, a light-skinned Arab, and a European. You could be anywhere else in Africa, you're going to have a European talking. You could be in the Caribbean, and Europeans talking. You could be talking about space, the Europeans talking to you about space. You could be about farming, the Europeans talking. Well, wait a minute, man. Wait a minute. And you say, well, it's just education. Yeah, it's educational, but after a point, everything, when you see somebody who has anything to say with any kind of knowledge, don't look like you. After a while, it plays a toll in your mind if you're paying attention. But if you're not paying attention, you'll completely miss it. So what he's saying here, that is very key, and to this day we're still being affected by it. But the author of this book is Hubert Henry Harrison. The name of the book is When Africa Awakes. I mean, I really encourage you guys to buy this book. It's not a long book by any stretch of the imagination. It's 146 pages, and it has a very, very good poem at the back of the book. It's called The Black Man's Burden. You could probably look it up here on YouTube and probably find somebody reading the poem. I'm not going to read it. I mean, it's a really, really good poem. You need to actually check it out. It's called The Black Man's Burden. Take up the black man's burden. That's the first line of the poem. Like I said, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to say that I'm going to leave a little something extra for you to actually, a little something special for you to actually read yourself. Now, normally I would end the video right at this point. However, what I'm about to read, you actually begin to understand why we're in the condition we're in, and why the educational system is still the way it is. Check this out. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him, do not stand here or go over yonder. He will find his proper place, and he will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there's not a back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary. History shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning. Now, I'm going to read this last part again real quick. History shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning. Dr. Carter G. Woodson. We have to learn how to do for self. I know some people say, "Oh, you do for self." I understand that, and I'm all for government doing something. I want to make that perfectly clear. I am all for government doing something. However, I'm going to stand firm with my point. What are we going to do until government decides to act? That's a question you need to ask yourself. In the meantime, we still have to eat. In the meantime, we still have to pay these bills. Are not going to stop coming in. Even after we're dead, the bills still come in. In the meantime, we still got to take care of our families. In the meantime, we still got to take care of our health. And so many other things we have to do. So while we're in the process of waiting for government to do something, if we can start doing what we need to do, and this is back in, he is talking about this back in his lifetime, 1875 to 1950. So here we are in 2017. And it seems to me that some of us want to throw our hands up in the air and say, well, let's wait for some divine intervention or government to do something. We can force government to do something. I don't want to discourage anybody from what they believe. But all I'm saying is, do we have a plan B or a plan C or even a plan D just in case? Just in case. Government said we're not going to act for another 2 or 3 years. Can we afford to sit and wait for another 2 to 3 years?